I'm Kim Krause at the Schreiber Media Center, and of course there's elections coming up on June 2nd. So today I'll be talking with Lize Vaugeois, who is the NDP candidate for the Thunder Bay Superior North riding. Hi Lize, thanks for showing up and talking to us.
Hi Kim, thank you for having me.
So I'd like to hear a little bit about yourself.
Sure, I moved to Thunder Bay in 1991 to play French horn with the symphony. I'd already been touring throughout most of Canada in a brass quintet prior to that, and I thought I might really like living in a northern community. Now I know that it could be more northern than where we are, but I had the chance to come and sub in the orchestra, and then people were so welcoming, and I felt like I was embraced. I was taking ice fishing, I was taking winter camping. I mean, it was wonderful. And so when I had the chance to audition for a permanent position, I did, and I got it, and I've been here ever since.
Well, and that's the Thunder Bay Symphony Orchestra.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Wonderful. It's actually a wonderful orchestra.
And so you weren't born in the area, though?
No, I was born in Hamilton, the Hamilton area.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to university first at McMaster, and then I was off in Germany studying music for a couple of years, and then went to Toronto, to U of T, finished my degree there, freelanced, and was part of a professional brass quintet. Actually started by the National Youth Orchestra of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that quintet was amazing. We performed in hospitals, nursing homes, prisons, and it really taught us the importance of reaching out to people, learning how to communicate.
As music does, yeah.
As music does, but beyond our music stands, where we really needed to, because when people are in long-term care, for example, they don't always have the same ability to communicate or to show that they're enjoying something. So you learn to recognize that there are lots of ways that people are receiving the gift of
It's
your
like
music.
reading somebody almost.
Yeah. And we really found that very affirming. It shaped a lot of who we became.
Wow.
And then when I had the chance to live here permanently in Thunder Bay, then snowshoeing, skiing, and ultimately for me, the orchestra and the musical life was quite fulfilling. A beautiful auditorium. And then I got introduced to kayaking, sea kayaking, actually in Rossport, one of the very first sea kayaking symposia that were held in Rossport.
Was that with Dave Tamlin?
Yes, it would have been. Yeah, big loss. And that started a number of us off, and a whole bunch of us came in from Thunder Bay for that, and so we had a kind of a built-in community. And that has let me visit the entire North Shore by kayak.
Wow.
So I knew about Schreiber from the water first, and Worthington Bay, and hiking up Mount Gwyn and so on. So all those things and the people have kept me here, and this is home now.
Wow, good.
Yeah.
So from music to kayaking to politics, tell me a little bit about maybe something about yourself more that would make you want to go into that area, because I'm trying to get the connection between the
few steps in between.
Yeah.
Okay, so a few things. Also, I spent a lot of time in schools teaching as an artist educator, and working together with teachers, with classroom teachers and young kids, which I loved, and you learn a lot from that. But also really going back to being a teenager, I've always been interested in what's going on politically, and trying to understand, for me it was the women's movement, and then later seeing anti-racist movements taking place in Toronto, and realizing that I didn't really understand very much, and that I needed to understand. So I spent my own time, and also taking extra courses, trying to understand more about how and why people are positioned so differently.
Mhm.
Then I did do a master's at Lakehead, which helped me.
What was
again.
that in?
It was in education,
Okay.
philosophy of education, I think, curriculum.
Mm.
And then I started teaching at Lakehead, and I thought, whoa, actually, I really like this. I really like this. And I also thought, I recognized how important the role is of somebody who is teaching teachers.
Mm.
Because teachers are enormously influential, important role. And then teaching teachers, you know, that's a space where you can also ask people to think about things that perhaps they might not have had the chance to think about before.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that for a couple of years, and then I thought, yeah, I like this, and actually I like scholarship, so I went and did a PhD. And that I did that in Toronto at U of T, and it was kind of half music education history
Mm.
and half social justice studies at OISE. It's known as OISE,
Mhm.
Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. And it was really, really fantastic opportunity.
Two quite different areas of interest there, which is
Yes, but the PhD really gave me the tools that I needed, to the analytical tools.
Mhm.
And also because I was really looking at Canadian history and trying to understand really, you know, where did the reserve system come from? Why is it that Indigenous people have such different, my Indigenous friends, people I'd met in Thunder Bay, why did they have such different life trajectories
Mhm.
to my own? And I really needed and wanted to understand what were the different political events that resulted in that kind of divide,
Mhm.
and, you know, access to a good quality of life, and seeing that could be very different. So really, that gave me a lot of tools and knowledge that I felt I needed. And then I, you know, found myself then much more comfortable speaking out. And somebody approached me and asked me if I was interested in running, and I tried it. I tested the water.
How long ago was this?
This was 3 provincial elections ago.
So you've actually had your toe dipped in this waters for quite a while. This isn't like something new to you. You haven't just jumped out today. I think I'm going to do this.
No, no.
Okay.
No, I had a chance to put my name in the same time that Andrew Folds was running,
Mhm.
and I had a lot of respect for Andrew, and I didn't think I would win, but I did think I would get the feel,
Mm.
right? Have a chance to speak, say my piece, and see what it felt like, and rightly, Andrew won that nomination. And then when it came around the next time and I was asked, then I was, you know, okay, I think I know what's involved.
I'm surprised you didn't just back off and say no thanks.
Yeah, no thanks, yeah. And I think by then I felt like, you know, I did have a good skill set for running. I really actually enjoy talking to people and hearing their stories. And I really enjoy problem solving. And, you know, I have been involved in negotiations as a musician, contract negotiations there. And, you know, part of my studies was recognizing that as musicians, we are workers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily, when you come up through the classical world, that's not really front and center at all.
No, you're doing it for creative reasons, and you're not thinking that this is actually a job. And as a job, there's conditions. Yeah.
Right, right. So the various studies did help me kind of put those pieces in place and recognize that. Oh yeah, you know what? What goes on with people working in other fields, in labor, all of those things are actually interconnected, and they affect all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're in a, you know, so I'm in a symphony orchestra, but if there are economic problems across the board, then funding is cut, and if people are finding the cost of living too high, then they can't afford to go out and do things. So even on a really basic level, I think it's important to understand how all the pieces fit together. But I've also been really interested in getting a systemic understanding of what kind of conditions lead to people really struggling and what kind of solutions, political solutions, are available to us to remediate some of that, make life a bit easier. Hopefully a lot easier, but I know that things have to be incremental. You work at it a piece at a time and try and address different aspects.
And it takes time.
Yeah, and yes, exactly. And it's true. If a mill disappears, it changes possibilities for staying in that community. If a symphony disappears, it really changes the quality of life and the attractiveness of the community.
So this will be a provincial election, and obviously one of the things the province is in charge of is our healthcare system. And there's been a lot of bickering and just general concern for the way that our health industry is going right now. Any comments on that?
Yes, our healthcare system, I think, has been systematically underfunded for quite a long time. For those who remember the Mike Harris government, which is quite a number of governments before, they really started cutting healthcare dramatically as they cut education. And with the goal of privatizing as much as possible. Now, we had 15 years of Liberal governments, and those issues weren't really addressed. And in fact, you have something like the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center, where we keep having hallway medicine. And then with the Conservative government also cut quite a lot of money out of healthcare. This is before COVID happened. And they also brought in Bill 115, which limited nurses to a 1% raise, but it also restricted hiring. COVID hits, and you have a system then in crisis because there aren't enough people to do the work. The people doing the work are extremely stressed out and exhausted. And they know that they're not being respected because they've lost their right to bargain, even. And what is happening now is that the Conservative government has actually, so we saw a lot of tragedies take place in long-term care. And, that was known for a long time, that things were not good. And a lot of long-term care was privatized, again, during the Harris years, and left that way. And now the Ford government is in the process of selling $17,000 worth, I probably got the number wrong, that doesn't sound like enough, probably 170, of licenses to the same privately owned long-term care facilities that go for 30 years. So that is going to, I'm sure it's meant to tie the hands actually of any government that succeeds them. It's certainly not where our public dollars should be going. And they also have public dollars going into private surgeries, private health clinics. And what that means then is that money is not available for the public system, and the public system remains underfunded, understaffed, and under stress. The healthcare is crucial to each and every one of us. We all need it at some time, and certainly long-term care. We're all going to get there, likely, one day. And it needs to be something that people aren't afraid to have to face, because the quality of care is there and it's good. And right now, it's difficult to find that level of care, and it's not the fault of the staff working in those for-profit facilities. But again, when if you have to generate profit for shareholders, then that is money that's removed from the system that could otherwise be put back into the system to hire more people, maintain whatever, better facilities. I would say probably the thing that's most missing is people, more
Yeah,
more
and
staff.
the money should be spent on serving their clients, really, and the clients are the people who are in these institutions that need to be looked after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the staff need to be paid properly.
Yeah.
It can't be precarious part-time work or where staff is, PSWs are trying to cobble together a living by working part-time here and here
Mhm.
and here,
Yeah.
without benefits then because it's all part-time and often not paid for their travel time and so on. I mean, it's quite stressful. And if we want people to care for us and our family members and our parents, they need to be respected for that work and need to be paid properly for that work.
Yeah, we have an aging population, especially in this region where we are, and people need to be treated with that dignity and that professionalism. And it's hard to, if you've got staff that are part time who just don't show up, or they're getting paid so little, it's like not worth it for them to show up. So.
Yeah. So the NDP is committed to putting money back into healthcare. So I think, initially we need to come back up to even a base level, which we're not at right now. And then to start improving the system and creating more opportunities for people to train for those positions. But the positions have to be attractive. And right now we're seeing nurses leaving the profession because they're burnt out.
Yeah, it's a stress. The other double-edged sword, of course, up here is to try and attract people to come to remote areas. We've got a huge problem right now, especially with nursing staff, where nobody is really prepared to move out of their comfort zone or to move to a more secluded area, let's say. So we need to somehow encourage people to come to this area to live, and that it's actually a viable alternative to staying in cities or in the southern Ontario, for instance, if we just talk about Ontario.
Right, and it can be a very wonderful lifestyle and connections to community.
Mm.
But you need housing.
Yeah.
And I understand that is a pretty serious issue here in Schreiber, but not just in Schreiber. It's an issue in Thunder Bay. It's an issue actually in many, many parts of the province that the housing doesn't exist.
Mm.
And when it does, where it is, the market has gone through the roof and it's become prohibitively expensive. So we hear that from young people who are worried about where they're gonna, can they move out of home?
Mm.
Can they afford to move out of home? Can they afford to start a family?
Yeah.
So the NDP does have a housing program, housing commitments to build, and we're talking about building then at all levels, right? Because there's the need for affordable housing, there's the need for transitional housing, there's need for housing for seniors, kind of in that where you still want to be independent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's really all levels, and there are pieces in the platform that address each of those levels, and that's a very seen as a very serious issue that needs to be addressed.
Mm. And especially with housing being seen more as a commodity nowadays and a way to make a quick buck, it's sometimes very difficult for people to think that housing is a necessity. We need a place to live.
Yes, we do.
And we don't want to live in something that is not going to make us feel good about ourselves, because then there's all kinds of other social issues coming up, and being stuck in a place that you just don't feel you want to be there, or you're there because of your situation.
Yeah.
A sense of pride, maybe, or a sense of ownership even.
Yeah, I think that's important, and I think we are witnessing so many stressors in people's lives: cost of living, cost of utilities, cost of hydro, which has not gone down, has continued to go up, and cost of housing, and then cost of education.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things really generate a lot of stress in people's lives and can result in mental health challenges because of the stress, can result in, we know that the opioid epidemic is also related to multiple stressors.
Yeah, it's
multiple
fueled by
factors.
that anxiety about whether you don't have a job or not have enough money to cope, and then it almost is, the use of drugs would become an outlet, and then that just gets.
Yeah, unfortunately, it has much greater consequences, but I think of it as a little bit as self-medication perhaps to start, and until it becomes an addiction, and then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
So we also know that opioid crisis needs to be addressed, those supports need to be funded. Really, it shouldn't be seen as a criminal problem. This is a healthcare problem.
Yeah, and I think there's a big education component there, because I know in our area, in the Thunder Bay area, there have been so many young lives lost to drug abuse, and it's tragic in a way, because it shouldn't have happened.
No, no, and I see young people because I do teach at the university, and I see students coming in again with pretty high stress levels and a lot of worries, and a kind of pressure that is not really a healthy pressure. So we are also committed to addressing the shortfall of funding to universities. So that's at the administrative level, but also at the student level. I mean, the student tuition is it's a lot.
Oh yeah.
And students wind up being in debt for many years, which they shouldn't have to be.
Yeah, you get out of school and all of a sudden you've got this big, huge debt for going to school, which ends up adding more pressure at a time where really you need some money if you want to start establishing yourself, and you're not even able to put deposits down on apartments in some cases, let alone ever buy a place.
So all of those are very issues that really they affect everyone, even if perhaps you don't have children. It still affects you because it affects the quality of life in your community. And if those supports aren't there, if healthcare isn't there when you need it, if you can't get into a hospital when you need to, or you get there and the staff is so stressed and they're running around trying to look after too many people, then that is ultimately going to affect everybody's quality of life. And the NDP really sees bringing those core services up to that base level that they need to be. And that, to me, is also how we get a more equal society. It's one of the main tools that we have for providing services that everybody can access. And if our education is properly funded and allowed to grow and develop and really serve the needs of students, then everybody has a shot at living better. And
putting everybody on an equal
it puts
level.
Everybody in a much more equal playing field, and removes a lot of that stress that haunts people. Climate change, huge issue, and huge for young people, and especially when they see an older generation, they don't know whether our generation is taking it seriously enough. I think many people do. I think actually many people take it very seriously and just aren't quite sure what to do. But it's crucial that we be building that transitional economy, so that no workers are abandoned. Right? It doesn't help anybody if people are suddenly out of work and don't know what lies ahead.
One of the other things, especially in our area, has been the attention to cuts proposed, not made yet, to the emergency medical services. And in an area like us, where it's 3-4 hours to the nearest hospital, and they want to cut the ambulances down to one every couple hundred kilometers, what would be your thoughts on that?
It's not going to work.
But again, that from what I understand in our area, that is to do more with Thunder Bay. So that would be a municipal issue rather than a provincial, or is there a provincial component that could step in?
There is definitely a provincial component, and again, it's about funding and the funding of core services. So I heard about this first in Thunder Bay because I think it's called Code Zero, when they don't have enough vehicles. And have since been made aware that what this means in the region. So if we pull an ambulance from Beardmore, for example, or Schreiber, to solve the problem in Thunder Bay, we've created a much worse problem in the region. So it's not a solution. The solution is to have enough vehicles for the population.
And personnel.
And personnel.
the emergency personnel that are needed here.
Yes.
Now, we really haven't talked about industry, and in our area especially, we hear a lot about mining, forestry, because that is our main industries. But it seems to also be, we're so focused on that it's like, should there be other avenues that we're looking at that could maybe not only invite people to our area to want to work, but also maybe let people know that we're more than just trees and rocks, and
Yeah.
for work-wise especially.
So I think we need to be looking at value added where we can from the existing industries, but also, opening up our imaginations to other possibilities. Is it possible to have concentrated computer areas in communities like Schreiber? Are there other things? Could we have a medical research center? Or I don't know, but I think that part of it is getting to know people in the communities and listening to their ideas, because the people often who are really committed to living somewhere are the ones who are saying, why haven't we tried this, or why haven't we tried that? And you need then to have a supportive government that's prepared to see the North as something more than just a place to extract resources from. And that's not to say that, we know that most of the communities here are here as a result of mining or forestry. And we really want to see those industries succeed as well. But also to be looking at always in terms of the long term and succession planning.
When we talk about resources, especially natural resources in our area here, we think about environmental impacts and issues, but there's also another level involved, and that is bringing Indigenous people into some of these projects that are going on, and how they could benefit from more involvement in these projects.
Right. So the first thing is that we're starting from a nation-to-nation relationship with Indigenous communities. And also thinking ahead always to whatever the projects are they going to benefit the communities that are affected? Will they benefit Indigenous communities? Have the environmental concerns been addressed? Is there any risk of, polluting groundwater or things that are going to affect people's lives quite seriously? But as equal partners at a negotiating table, then, Indigenous people need to be there and advocating on behalf of their communities. And I see that happening. And I'm also happy to know that communities do have the right to say no. And if a project is going to harm a community, then we should also be saying no and looking for another way of either can we get that resource some other way, is, what needs to happen so that we are doing, using our resources responsibly, respectfully, and
The least amount of impact.
And so that all the people and the natural world also along the way is able to continue to recover after, because mining digs into the earth, right? You're cutting a big hole, but can you remediate that later, and can you do that in a way that doesn't pollute the groundwater? All of those things need to be addressed, but we're also seeing industry that wants to address those things, and so we do need to come together and work together with all of those priorities.
Well, thank you very much, Lize, for showing up and doing this with us. I really appreciate it all happened in such short notice and everything else.
Thanks so much, Kim. Thanks for your time.
I've been talking with Lize Vaugeois, the NDP candidate for the Thunder Bay Lake Superior North riding. Thanks for watching.